At times like this, we're better off from hearing from Niall Stanage, White House columnist for our partners at The Hill. Niall, good to see you with you. I think we can all agree that White House reporters, of which I was one and you are one, are sort of entitled crybabies, for lack of a better term. But are they wrong to complain about not seeing the president?
No, they're both entitled crybabies and right in making the complaint that they're making. Look, as you are well aware, Leland, the White House press corps complains all the time about everything. But there is a legitimate point here. The president has kept a very low profile, and I think there is a political motivation for that. I think, frankly, the White House are so far trying to keep him as far away from this kind of chaos and catastrophe in Del Rio as possible.
Is it the chaos and catastrophe in Del Rio which is problematic, or is it what we just talked about on Capitol Hill of his domestic policy?
Well, in the case of the domestic policy, what I would say is that he does have the chance of victory there. It's by no means guaranteed, but he has a chance of victory. In Del Rio, that's just a bad story for the president, whatever happens. The administration is talking about the fact that they're reducing the number of people who are there. There are deportation flights happening, but it's still a bad story on which they are getting hit from left and right. That makes it a bit different from the Capitol Hill story, in my view.
Yeah, the video we just showed you was the press being ushered out of the Oval Office when the president didn't take any questions. The Prime Minister of the UK did. You probably have a better count than I do, but going to and from New York, to and from Wilmington, Delaware, this event, there were a lot of opportunities to see the president, and he just never made himself available. Is the idea they don't want him questioned about it, and they're worried what he might say, or they're worried there's just not a good answer to Del Rio?
President Biden has a well-known capacity to veer off message, and that's something that makes White House aides and Biden allies nervous. So I think there is a desire to control things as much as possible. The instance you mentioned with Boris Johnson, the White House blamed Mr. Johnson for taking questions without apparently telling them first. So I think there is a desire to sort of keep President Biden on quite a tight leash, as it were, and that is, of course, exacerbated when there's a bad story dominating the headlines.
The control room's telling me, do we have the tweets of all the times that he didn't take questions?
I'm not supposed to take any questions. I'm not supposed to be answering all these questions. I'm supposed to leave. I'll take your questions, and as usual, folks, they gave me a list. First person I was instructed to call on was... I'm happy to take questions if that's what I'm supposed to do.
All right, so we did have it, and that's when they cut him off, quite literally in the live feed. I guess the question is, it sort of begs the question, is the president in control of who he takes questions from and whether or not he gets to, or is he being that handled?
Well, it's a kind of combination of both. You know, in a number of those cases, he said, I'm not going to take questions, or I've been told not to take questions, and then he took one or two. But in general, there is, as I say, nervousness about this. There is a desire to control the message. There is the fear that the president will say something that will change or run across the preferred message of the day. So, you know, on one hand, you have press handlers who want to run quite a tight ship. And on the other, you have a president of the United States who's been in politics for about 50 years and takes a certain amount of pride in his capacity to handle whatever is thrown at him as he sees it.
Yeah. All right, Niall, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Leland.
All right. Up next, the FBI issues a federal arrest